みなさんこんにちは。僕のチャンネルへようこそ。日本語の勉強を始めるとき、いつも自分にどこから始めるべきかと何が大切かと問いかけていた。そのトピックについて話したいから、その今日の議題です。Hey guys, in this video I want to cover the topic of where to start learning Japanese. For me, I've dabbled in Japanese for a long period of time before actually learning Japanese, and part of the reason for that was because I just didn't know where to start. I'd learnt hiragana in high school, but that was the extent of that learning, and then I was interested in anime and manga, but I didn't actually study the language. So I went through a long period of time of just not knowing where to start, what approach, and it was overwhelming to the point where it made me wait a year before I started learning, which is a year that I could have been studying and getting better. So today, that's the topic, and I hope it will be helpful for you guys if you're interested in learning Japanese and other languages as well. So I would suggest step one, learn kana. So as you've probably heard, if you're interested in Japanese, Japanese has three writing systems. So the first one is hiragana, and the second one is katakana. When you put those together, they refer to them as kana. And the third one, which is the scary one, is kanji. So a brief history of why Japanese uses three writing systems is back talking 700 AD era. Japanese was a spoken only language. They did not write it down. So whenever and whoever decided that they needed to write it down, they chose to borrow Chinese characters, which we call kanji. And back then, this writing system was called Manyogana. So they used Chinese characters to represent the sounds that they already had in their spoken language. This was all very complicated, so what they did was they took little pieces of each kanji and they just removed them and made them a separate writing system. So that, along with a lot of changes over the years, is where hiragana and katakana come from. And they both had varied usage. Katakana used to be used by men exclusively. Hiragana was seen as more feminine. But these days, hiragana is the main writing system. You'll find it in particles. You'll find it in furigana, which is the little gloss over the top of kanji so you can read it. And also personal names often use hiragana. Katakana is often used for foreign words that have come into Japanese, such as ice cream. Aisukurimu will be written in katakana. So those two are the easy. There's about 100 characters in total, and they shouldn't take long at all to learn. And that's a great place to start. But that recommendation is all over YouTube and all the websites. So what I wanted to focus today on is the sound aspect attached with each kana. So I think this gets glossed over a little bit too much. When we learn kana, we can, as English speakers, they've given them to us in what they call romaji, which is just using Roman letters to spell out each kana. So you will have a, I, u, e, o, and ka, ki, ku, ke, ko. And this is fine, but people take that for granted and they won't learn the sounds, the actual sounds of Japanese. So step two is to learn the actual sounds that Japanese produce when they speak Japanese. So there's not too many difficult ones. I would say the main one that gets a little bit mispronounced often is the da sound. So the line da, di, do, de, do. Now, in Japanese, they do not have r or l sounds. They just don't exist. So the only reason it's written with an r on our learning materials in English is because that's the closest we have to their sound. So don't use r or l, and it's not a d. So to pronounce that, what you have to do is you'll find just behind your top teeth there's a bump, and you can feel it with your tongue. This is called your alveolar ridge, and we use this bump to produce sounds like s and t and d. So the easiest way to produce the da sound is to make da, that's da sound, da. You'll notice that your tongue is flat on the top of your alveolar ridge. What you need to do is bring the tongue up to the back of the ridge, and it's like a flat sound. This sound is called a flap. And you essentially make a D sound, but with your tongue up like that. So that's a commonly mispronounced one, and it's very important that you get those right because they're everywhere. Ramen. So ramen, we would call ramen, is ramen. And once you've practiced that, you can then use that in the compound sounds, like in people's names. A lot of names start with du or ryo. So that's di and yo, or di and you. So ryo, ryu. That's another commonly mispronounced one. Another one that doesn't get talked about as often is fu, as in Fuji, Mount Fuji. Because it has an F and it's very close to that F sound, everyone just leaves it as fu, and it's quite a strong sound in English. In Japanese, it's a softer sound. It's more of a h. It's like you make an F, but then let the air go before you've closed it off. So h, Fuji-san, and that's that sound. So if you want to learn more about sounds in languages, I strongly recommend looking up what's called the IPA, which is the International Phonetic Alphabet, and it's essentially a chart on all the sounds in all the languages that they know of, that we use to speak these languages, and it'll give you the place and the manner of articulation, which is just fancy terms of where and how it is made in your mouth. And it really helps to get those sounds good before you start moving. So the reason you want to learn these two things is because before you can even start making words, you need to be able to put pieces together so that your mouth can produce those words. There's no point in learning words if you can't pronounce them. And you can learn to pronounce whole words as you go, but the problem is you may fall into bad habits. And that'll end up being hard to fix because you've gotten stuck saying it a certain way, and I've fallen into that trap myself many times. So I wish I knew to study certain sounds in Japanese. So once you've learnt your kana, Hiragana and Katakana, and I'll do a video in the coming weeks of my techniques to learn those efficiently. And then once you've learnt the phonetic part, I might even add that in to the kana video that I'll be making. Once you've got those down, then I would suggest moving on to learning words and grammar. Kanji is something that will take a long period of time and shouldn't stress about it. Definitely keep it in the back of your mind and learn important ones that you use more frequently, but don't stress over it. Language learning is a long period kind of a goal, so we don't need to cram. You don't want to just study kanji for the sake of studying kanji when you're not learning anything else usable. So learn hiragana, katakana, and the phonetics, and then move on to words and some grammar. This will help the flow. I think there's no need to overcomplicate starting a language. People throw all different kinds of ideas and methods, and in reality, all you need to get started are those. So definitely do that. That pretty much wraps it up for this video. Nice short sweet video for my first one. I had written quite a lengthy in-depth script, but I figured linguistic theory isn't exactly everyone's cup of tea. Plus, if I want to make that type of a video, I can do that at a later date. So first video, introductory to learning Japanese. I hope that it helps someone. If they don't know where to start, just keep it simple. Forget about all the complicated theories and overwhelming. It's just get started. You know, keep at it, and you'll eventually get there, and you'll look back and you'll be glad that you started. So stop hesitating and just learn the kana, learn the phonology, and off you go. So until the next video, I'll catch you later. Ja, mata ne.